Hi, my name is Michael Grande, and I want to thank Julie for having me at this conference and speak about some of the philosophies that I really believe that music educators around the world should know. A little bit about myself. I am the owner of three music schools. I have one in New York, New Jersey, and Tampa, Florida. And I'm also the creator of the world's first virtual music lesson platform called RockOutLoud.live. It's the first United States patented platform as well. We're in 176 countries, and believe it or not, we did not build this because of COVID. We started this in 2017. But I wanted to speak to you about some of the philosophies I have about music education. And I think this is really important that I share this perspective because a lot of people really don't understand it until I explain it. So I do these conferences all the time, and I start usually by asking people, I said, raise your hand if you can name the teacher in your grade school who taught you how to read. And you'll see nobody puts their hands up, and everybody's like looking around and they don't know. And then I'll say something like, okay, raise your hand if you can tell me the name of your favorite teacher in elementary school. And all of a sudden, you'd hear people blurt out, Mrs. Friedman, Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Jones, and all of a sudden, the names top of mind. And the reason why that happens is we don't remember what we're taught. We remember how we're treated. And in my opinion, I think that's more important because you're not going to remember the lesson. You're not going to remember the person that taught you how to read. And by the way, we read every day. But the person that came top of mind, that probably was not in that person's mind for 20, 30 years. But they knew exactly who that person is simply because of the way they were treated. And when I was speaking to Julie, she said, why don't you reference something in your book? And this is not a cheap book plug, but the whole premise of my book, and my dad still gives me grief about the title, which is From Teacher to Coach and Why You Would Never Want to Be a Teacher. I think if I could share some of my philosophies of why it's so important to be a coach to a child as opposed to being a teacher, I think we'll have better results. And I'll give you an example. Very often parents will come in and say, okay, could you introduce me to my son or my daughter's teacher? And I said, I hate to disappoint you, but we don't have teachers here. We have coaches. And she's like, this isn't a basketball game. This isn't a soccer team. This is a music lesson. And I said, yeah, that's true. And I never like giving people a definition. I like asking them what they think the definition is. So I said, okay, so why don't you tell me the difference? Could you define for me a teacher? And they'll say, sure. Teachers give you, curriculums. They'll teach you, I don't know, things to do about subject titles. They'll give you homework. They'll test you. And I said, okay, so then what's the definition of a coach? Oh, well, coaches, they focus on you. They want you to succeed. They'll find your learning language. They'll figure out best ways for you to learn and understand something. Then I said, well, what would you rather for your child, a teacher or a coach? And that's when the light comes up. The parent would say, I think we want a coach. So that's the whole premise of it. And to give you a little backstory about what you can do differently as a teacher versus a coach, this is an example that I would use, a very simple example. We have somebody that will come in and they want to learn how to play, let's say, guitar. And I'm a guitar player. I know there's a lot of piano players in the audience, but as a guitar player, most kids want to play their favorite songs. And we have our own guitar books, and I've written all our own guitar books, but it's sometimes we have to deviate. We have to teach the child what they want to learn, not what we want to teach, because you have to get that connection. And I believe if you don't get that connection in the first couple of minutes, well, then that might not be something that's sustainable in terms of how long that student will stay for a music lesson. So if that person wants to learn how to play a Van Halen song, well, I'll teach them the most simplified version of a Van Halen song so they can walk out after 30 minutes and get this feeling of confidence that they're able to play music like their idols. And that, we call that bit by the bug. That's what I call it. When they get bit by the bug, that becomes the connection between a coach and a student, and they're going to want to learn a lot more than as if it was a curriculum-based music education. I'll give you an example. Whoever has ever been inspired by Mary Had a Little Lamb, yet most of the time for your first music lesson, that's what you teach. In my opinion, if you focus on what the child wants to learn and not what the teacher wants to teach, and you get that connection right away, that's going to open up a whole different world for that music lesson with that child. To me, that's focusing on the child. And that's what a coach does. And sometimes a student might not know how to play a certain thing, and they might not figure it out the same way the other students do. You have, as a coach, you have to figure out their learning language. And I feel that that's so important. And I became really, really passionate about coaching as opposed to teaching, not just in my schools, but all the schools, because of something that happened a couple of years ago. I flew out to Rwanda, and in Rwanda, my goal was to convert 16 music teachers into 16 coaches, and nobody thought that was possible at all. And after spending some time there and doing a couple of clinics, I want to say a lot of clinics, we did these 16 teachers actually converted to coaches, and the change between the coaches and the results that they had with the students in Africa, Rwanda, Africa, was so incredible. I felt like this was a universal thing. I didn't think that this was a cultural thing. I didn't think this was a United States thing. And in my heart of hearts, I really believe that being a coach, whether you're in Rwanda or in Europe or you're somewhere in the States, I think it's so important to be a coach to a child, because I think every child needs a coach. This is just my view. I don't expect anybody to change, but I just give me the opportunity to explain to you how important it is that a child needs a coach in their life. I think that's important. Again, the name of the book, From Teacher to Coach and Why You Would Never Want to Be a Teacher, gives you so many life examples of how you can change things around if you're looking to change things around. So I'm not looking to change anybody, but just give you a different perspective. So Julie, thank you so very much for having me. I really, really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much. This is Michael Grande with Rock Out Loud.